Do you fear that actually the battle is being lost, has been lost, and in fact the kind of discussion we're having here is really a marginalisation of where the problem is and what needs to be done? In other words, everyone in this kind of area is now being pushed into a sidebar.
Yeah, but I don't think that's because the battle is lost. When I say the battle is lost is, up until last year actually, here or in any of the climate COPs, the song was 1.5 alive. Everybody who went said, yeah, 1.5 alive. Well, Johan Rockström, Planetary Health Check, September, New York, 1.5 is dead. We're going to crash through 1.5. We're going to go 1.8 to 2.7 degrees Celsius. Apologies for the Americans. We're going to overshoot. Then we need to keep maximum pressure on decarbonization to push ourselves back under 1.5 in the next 2 to 3 decades. And hope, and that's the word, hope, that the natural tipping points won't tip in those 3 decades. This is not me making it up. This is almost literal what Johan says when he speaks about the planetary health check. So from that point of view, we have lost the 1.5 battle. But we cannot give up on getting back under 1.5 as soon as we can. But whether or not tipping points tip, whether or not the fires or the floods or the whatever are just the beginning, I don't think anybody knows.
Well, let's see. And he's used some pretty respectable words as opposed to the kind of things I've heard a lot of people say, which is not just we're losing the battle, and they've used some pretty unpleasant words to say we're actually in danger of screwing up very significantly. But let me go to Katie first, because Katie, you are working for MNC Saatchi, which are in the business of PR and communication.
Communications in the whole, but for global social issues.
And I need to just say that Johan Rockström in the intro to the Planetary Health Check launched, which as Peter said was in New York back in September, says we've got to know how to communicate this because people don't understand what we're talking about. What about the words we're using?
So I think it's amazing to me that we've taken an issue that has unimaginable potential impact that's going to happen to humans, to nature, society, economies, and we've managed to create a lexicon that is incredibly boring and has stripped out all the emotion in the issue. I think we've created a language that makes it easier to be siloed. Whether you look at language like sustainability, ESG, etc., I think if we were thinking about the opposition, they would never create language that was so exclusive that meant it didn't feel like an inclusive club to be about. So the example I always give is in the US with the Republicans. They wanted to increase opposition to their state tax. So what did they do? They looked for an automotive word that could bring loads of associations. They changed the estate tax to the death tax, 10% swing in opposition. We're not creating those micro scripts really, or positioning it in values or benefits, and it's not reflecting the modern landscape of communications. If you look at whether it's Take Back Control or Make America Great Again, there was value-led platforms, and then beyond that, messaging that appealed to very different interests, depending on what you cared about, whether it's saving animals, whether it's better jobs for the economy, and I just don't feel like we're taking advantage of some of the opportunities to reframe the issue.
So if we don't understand what sustainability is, or the average person out there who's either being fried or is being flooded or is being frozen or is living in very difficult conditions, and they don't understand what we're talking about, what is being said in something like the SDG Tent, what kind of language will they understand which will help mobilize and put pressure on the politicians to do things which are necessary at speed?
So I also think there's even a question to ask, which is how much do people need to understand sustainability to do the actions that we require of them? So
they understand if they're being flooded, or
yes, but a great example for me would be at the moment, clean jobs in America are rising at twice the rate of US employment, and one of the biggest states benefiting is Texas. With my comms lens on, I would create advertising of a weather-worn, masculine Texas man with a denim jacket and an American flag on the background saying "American-made energy," and I would make it feel values-led and get people to buy in for their reasons rather than trying to get people to buy in for the reasons we want them to buy in. And I think that's a really crucial difference.
What about the issue of public health? we're all going to be badly affected by the fact, as we saw in Dubai, the temperature going up to 62 degrees, rain twice in 3 weeks, up to 10 feet deep. And we had in the United Kingdom a broadcast scientist, Michael Mosley, who went out for a walk in Greece. He should have known better. It was 41 degrees. It killed him.
I think that's another interesting issue. Again, I think we're creating language around that issue that's creating silos. So I hear people talking about the climate and health nexus, taking two baggy words that are hard to understand and putting them together and trying to make it appealing. Whereas actually talking about infectious disease, talking about breathing, trying to position it in things that people can tangibly picture in their heads. I think that's where we've got to go to try and find those ins to get emotion and rational messaging.
So how could you, as a communications expert, unleash impact in a way which is not being unleashed at the moment?
So the thing I would like to see, I often see messaging research, but I see it as starting with quite technical messaging and then asking people what ones they prefer. I think looking at messaging from a very values-led, auto-emotive sort of perspective to be a public good for the community, to work out what language resonates best, to get broad partisan support. And I would also look at unusual suspects, because a lot of change doesn't just happen by the message. It's a sense that unlikely suspects are joining others, and that's been shown throughout history. At the moment, we don't have the unlikely suspects on the stage with the likely suspects to go, oh, right, there's momentum. This has got beyond the echo chamber. So I think we need to think about protagonists as well.